Now, some of the reports that I want to touch on briefly here, the Top Talkers report allows you to kind of go in and dynamically run reports on the data in the tool. So this allows you to kind of drill through the performance type data in the tool. And then for any of the different performance related metrics that we're monitoring, you can pull up whatever amount of collected history you need to for that particular statistic. So this is designed to be able to very quickly access the data that you might want to get to for a report. And there's a couple of options in generating these reports that are worth mentioning. So I can pick a quick time, obviously, or I can go in and select a custom start and end time if I want to, and just use the calendar to pick a particular date and time if I want to make sure that I've got a really easy way to kind of create the time frame that I need. Instance name lets you filter out specific instances. So for example, if I'm trying to run this report on a bunch of Ethernet interfaces on a switch, but I only want to see the ones that have the word uptime in the description field, I can put that into the instance filter, and basically it'll match any interface or any variable that matches that filter to generate that report from. So that's a really useful option to filter these out. Obviously, you can pick how you want to sort them and whether you want to see average or peak and how many you want to see. And then from a formats perspective, histograms means separate graphs, whereas a stacked histogram will stack all the statistics together and sum them. So if, for example, if I'm looking at all of the processes running on one particular server, the stacked histogram is a really useful way to look at that because the sum of all those variables will be the total amount of memory used. Line graph and bar graph give me ways to look at that data where it's separated, but it's all on one graph. So if I want to run a line graph of my latency data, for example, or if I want to just clean that up and say what I really care about actually is just what the highest is, I might do that as a bar graph, which is going to give me a single variable for each of those and just show me the peak so I can quickly see who's got the highest latency on these different devices and what those values are. For any one of these reports, I can then email and schedule those reports out very simply. I can download or email them in real time, or I can add them to a custom report. So when I add to a custom report, I can either create a new report or I can add it as a section to an existing report. And when I do that, you're going to see this number increment. This tells you how many sections are in that particular report. And I can stack multiple reports together to generate a kind of a single report entity that'll go out. So if I want to automate this and have this report sent out, I can just hit schedule, I can pick who to send it to and how often to send it out, and it'll automatically make those options for me. So it'll send that out on a regular schedule. There's two caveats with custom reports. One is when I create that custom report, I need to make sure I'm using a relative time frame. So for example, in this report that I just added, that Top Talkers report that I added was set to a fixed time frame. It was set to a fixed start and end time because I'd picked them out of the calendar. If you do that, the automated reports will go out with the same time frame every single time. So you want to make sure that when you're creating custom reports, you're using relative time frames like last week or last 7 days or last 30 days, as opposed to absolute time frames like August or October 11th through October 15th, because those absolute timeframes will get written into the report, and then you'll get the same data every time, which is probably not what you wanted. But I can click PDF to view that report, in real time, or HTML to pull it up from the web interface, and it'll generate a little cover sheet with the PDF, and then I'll get whatever sections I had added to that report. I'll be able to see with that data in it. So gives you a really easy way to create and automate those reports and make sure that you're getting what you need. Even if you don't remember to go log into the tool every day, you can still make sure to get those sent out to you. Some of the other interesting things, the built-in reports, there's a lot of different options here. I just encourage you to play with them. A couple of ones that I want to make sure to point out. The strategic group health report is useful because it lets you use those application groups to get a picture of how things are performing. It's filterable by time of day and day of week, and it allows you to look at not only what the current performance is like, but also what the trend is. So this will show you, for example, this month to date versus the previous month, and whether it's getting better or getting worse, and kind of what the overall trend is. So it'll give you an idea of whether improving or getting worse over time. One of the other built-in reports that's really interesting is actually the inventory report. So the inventory report will actually go in and look for data that we've learned about devices. So for example, if I go in and look at my routers, for example, with this report, it'll generate a report that'll show me like the description and the serial number. And if I populated location and contact, those would show up on the tool as well. So it kind of gives you a way to look for things like, what is the serial number of the devices, what's the description, what's the software they're running, et cetera. So it's kind of a useful report from that perspective as well. Now, one of the other really useful functions that we've built in that's actually fairly new is we've got the concept of what we call server forensics. So now on any of the systems where you're getting per process CPU or memory, you're going to actually see there's a top 50 graph here for CPU and memory. So we can actually pull up what's been using up my CPU on the system. And next to it is what we call the forensic report, which will take both CPU and memory and give you a way to kind of view a stacked image of what those have looked like over whatever time frame. And by default, I think it's the last 7 days here. But this report is designed to be dynamic. So if I need to go in here and in order to see what I need to see, I might want to turn some of these processes off to kind of zoom in, and I can kind of see exactly what's going on with those different values and see kind of what the overall values is. But this is one of the things that by allowing you to stack the histograms, you can very quickly identify if there's a particular spike in a moment in time, what processes are responsible, or who's eating up all the memory, who's got the memory leak. All of those kind of things become really, really obvious when you use the forensics report for that.